We will now return to our previous constitutional crisis, the repeal of Roe. This was written yesterday. It's now Sunday morning. This was written Saturday evening about banning birth control. In our post-Dobbs world, the question has come up whether a birth control can be banned. You can look at this as a rights question and as a science question. Calling it a rights question may or may not get you points in the world of well-ordered liberty that Justice Alito has constructed. This is especially the case if you equate liberty with progress. Conservatives believe in truths, not moving from them. It is just how they think. Birth control was not an issue until chemical birth control was invented in 1960. Before that, the question was sterilization, and the church was actually on the right side, that people had a right to reproduce regardless of whether they were feeble-minded. And the church stood with the people who wanted to have sex. So 100 years ago, people with Down syndrome or other mental deficits or ethnicities were urged not to reproduce, or they were just simply sterilized against their will. Here's a question. Is Down syndrome contagious? I.e., do the sperm and egg contain an abnormal number of chromosomes in the second generation? There have to be studies, just saying. I'd hate to admit that eugenicists were right, but it is a medical question, which I'm sure there's a medical answer to. Now, conservatives responding to the promptings of the Catholic Church on contraception may or may not create an Establishment Clause issue. It has certainly become a political coalition issue. So where do we draw the line? Birth control makes sex easier, but does it really kill an individual? Luckily, the science is clear. It does not. Any pharmacist who won't give out Plan B for moral reasons should ask their employer to be shifted to the deli or the meat department, or maybe the coffee section. They can brew espressos rather than drugs, or pour coffee rather than cough syrup. In the 10th grade, we learned about the difference between generative and regulative development. In generative development, the fertilized egg copies itself, but there is no differentiation. If you cut off a cell, there is no impact on the resulting organism. The advance of science has confirmed this. Before gastrulation, a blastocyst is a chorion, which becomes the afterbirth, and a collection of stem cells. Cut this in half, and you get twins. Before Pope John Paul II, St. John Paul in other words, and the publication of Evangelium Vitae, which was ghosted by a cardiologist, not an embryologist, this used to be seen as proof that life did not begin at conception. We asked this in ethics class when I was at Loras College, and they said, no, twinning. So the position that it did has become Catholic branding. And the pro-life movement allows such branding to go unchallenged, even though it is wrong. Not that there are still conservative Catholics who believe in the historical reality of Adam and Eve. They don't believe in Darwin because that would call their belief in original sin into question, which upsets their view of salvation as punishment for man's sins, or rather, for women's sins. It is a more serious moral quandary than we give them credit for. Allow birth control and evolution as progress, and they may have to find a different view of sin and salvation. That impacts the First Amendment in a different way, because then they have a religious liberty issue. Sin obviously does exist because we created it. Hook, line, and sinker. Without law, there can be no sin. If I remember the book of Romans correctly, without sin, there is no need for salvation. The reality is that sin and harm do not need an origin story to demand our attention, but how we overcome it must still be dealt with. Jesus said it was forgiveness. The Buddha says it was compassion and detachment. These are basically the same things. I could go on about how the crucifixion is a divine vision quest. If you're interested, search my website or buy my books. I talk about this on Amazon, or in my books, which are available on Amazon. My point is that for some Catholics, this issue is more central than most people know, So be gentle with them, especially the LGBTQ plus asexual priests who are not even out to themselves yet. Now back to science. Till gastrulation, the embryo can have no moral claim to self-existence. If you cut it in half and get two embryos, it is not a unique life. The electrochemical coordination that happens with regulative development, which we can call a materialistic soul, and which continues to govern the organism until death, has not yet entered the building. Until it does, only maternal genes, those of the chorion, control development. But pro-lifers see this as a line for when to ban abortion, which it could be they should cool their jets. The justification on when to ban abortion has nothing to do with the existence of a set of rights attached to a fetus. It is about how much government intrusion must be allowed into all pregnancies. If you regulate one kind of D&C, you must regulate all of them. This is an unsavory prospect for anyone who has lost a child to miscarriage. Okay, so let's segue back into abortion. How many grieving families, or contraception rather, how many grieving families must be interviewed in order to save a fetus from abortion? How many? The answer is none, which means no abortion ban before the 20th week. Between weeks 12 and 20, and between 20 and viability, the questions are, can abortion be regulated and how? The answer is not so hard. After week 20 and maybe earlier, abortion can be limited to inducing birth. Whatever is the earliest point that birth can be induced can be the abortion line, but the question on whether to induce should be, in most cases, up to the woman and her doctor. If society does not like the post-20-week abortion or does not like the post-20-week abortions of Down syndrome children, it must show us the money. Families with these children must be given respite care and adequate support. The demand on society cannot end there, however. People abort their Down syndrome children because they're afraid that they will be impoverished after the parents have died. The solution is not hard to deal with. Simply increase SSI for Down's children and others to median income levels with no work requirement that is not therapeutic. SSDI must also go up. Show me the money, since I'm on SSDI. Also retirement. Indeed, tying such income to earnings must be reduced. The employer contribution needs to be credited on an equal dollar basis and uncapped. In other words, use consumption taxes. In other words, put up or shut up. Taxes on the makers must go up. Children and the disabled must be given a bigger slice of the pie. When they are, the pie grows. When the rich keep the money, the pie shrinks, with the excess going into the Wall Street gambling casino. The choice is really not hard if it is laid out as a pro-life issue. One final visit to the science lab. Consider the following experiment and the moral question involved. It is a variation on cloning. Instead of implanting an IVS embryo ASAP, wait until it becomes a blastocyst. Assume this is possible, just for argument. Before implantation, evacuate the stem cells from the chorion and replace them with the stem cells of a living person. After implantation, gastrulation is a sure thing. These stem cells, unlike those evacuated, are proven to be genetically viable. This is why embryonic stem cells are useless in most cases. The child will develop and be born. Males would be named Barabbas and females Batima. Whose souls do these children have? The souls of the cells that were evacuated and of the chorion? The souls of the stem cell donor? Or does it have a soul? Is it an abomination? Or is it their own? Put in this way, the answer is obvious. Granted, if you time the birth to be astrologically similar to that of the donor, the offspring will seem like a part of them, but that is familiarity rather than unity. Cloning is simply twinning with a longer time horizon. This also shows that prior to gastrulation and the formation of a unique electrochemical soul, There is no child there. A collection of cells in a chorion is no more morally significant than a collection of adult stem cells in a petri dish, or any other kind of culture, cell culture. Neither my absent tonsils, my right adrenal gland, or the cyst removed from my throat a few years ago have moral agency. Neither does a blastocyst. Again, anyone with a pharmacy degree that is not aware of this needs to get a refund from their school and ask to be transferred to the Deli section. Note, this material has already been posted before. Sadly, it is still current. Thus endeth the blog post. Please share it. It needs to be shared because it should be obvious. This is not just a rights issue. This is not just an Establishment Clause issue. This is not an advancement of rights issue. This is just basic science, and it needs to be recognized as such. And it's also basic economics about Down's children. So, yes, now that Roe has been repealed, these questions are very important at the state level and the federal level too, especially the federal level because we're asking for money for SSI recipients, and enough money. Not this whole we don't want to have encourage sloth by SSI recipients just is morally wrong. People don't work because they can't work, and all the assigning fiscal pressure is just essentially torture, it's slavery. So yes, this is an argument to be shared in the entire blessed community. So please share it. Please like this video so more people will see it. Please become a patron if you so wish. Please support this work the work of this channel. I will be very thankful. So yes, it'll be like going to work since I'm on SSDI. But yes, share, subscribe, and do all those other things. Thus endeth the series to date on the repeal of Roe, although I'm sure there'll be something else. So thank you for your kind attention. Have a wonderful day.